Hello, and welcome to Bite-Sized Game History. Today we will cover the history surrounding the Magnavox Odyssey, the first at-home game console. So sit back, relax, and let's get into it. The Magnavox Odyssey was the first commercial home video game console, created by a small team at Sanders Associates Company. The team consisted primarily of three men, Bill Rush, Bill Harrison, and Ralph Baer, who led the team. Ralph Baer is largely considered the grandfather of video games for his work in the industry. Baer came up with the idea in 1951 to build something into the television the owner could control. It, however, wasn't until 1966 that he started exploring the possibility of playing video games on a television. His games were not the first video games to exist, however his prototype, the Brown Box, later to be made into the Magnavox Odyssey, was the first to popularize the at-home game console. Ralph, Bill, and Bill worked through 6 prototypes until they reached their final prototype, the Brown Box. They demonstrated the Brown Box to the Magnavox Company, a manufacturer of primarily radios and televisions, which most executives did not seem impressed by, except for the VP of Marketing, Jerry Martin, who was in favor, and so Magnavox agreed to produce the console. The Magnavox Odyssey was rather rudimentary design by today's standards, however an unprecedented accomplishment for gaming at the time. The Odyssey was a black, white, and brown oblong box connected by wires to 2 rectangular controllers. The primary console box connected to the television set through an included switch box, which allowed the players to switch the television input between the Odyssey and the regular television. The controllers were designed to sit on a flat surface. They contained 1 button marked Reset on the top of the controller and 3 knobs on the sides. The Reset button did not reset the game like later games systems would do, rather was used by different games to reset individual elements within the games, such as making a player's dot visible after it is turned off. The system was powered by 6 C batteries, or an optional AC power supply that was sold separately. The Odyssey was capable of displaying 3 square dots and a vertical line on the screen. 2 of the dots were controlled by the 2 players, and the third by the system. The main console had 2 dials, one of which moves the vertical line across the screen, and one of which adjusts the speed of the system-controlled dot. The game included plastic overlays to create visuals which stuck to the television via static cling. Some of the games for the Magnavox Odyssey were table tennis, which is essentially Pong, and if the lawsuits that came for Atari after the release of Pong shows anything, it is where they got the idea. As well as Ski, Simon Says, Shooting Gallery, and Football, with a large array of other games that were released for the system. A total of 28 games on 11 different game cards were released. 13 games were included with the console, with the option to purchase other games individually for $5.49 US or as a set for $24.99 US. Those must have been the days when it came to video game pricing. The Magnavox was released in September of 1972 and was sold solely through the Magnavox stores, which likely hurt the sales numbers of the system, as well as issues with Magnavox implying it only worked with their TV set, even though the advertisements had stated to the contrary. The Magnavox retailed for $100 US, much more than Ralph had originally intended for the console. Magnavox making multiple changes to the system regardless if they were good or bad drove up the price to such a high rate for the time, especially considering that $100 US in 1972 would equate closer to $600 US nowadays. Bob Fritcher, the product manager, stated they sold 69,000 units in the first year, and Ralph Baer stating the sales were closer to 100,000 units. Upwards of 350,000 units were sold in its lifespan. Still a large number of units sold, yet when compared to other systems of the times, the units sold was much lower. It is interesting to think of where the Magnavox could have gone if not for the meddling of the production company. Something I think most gamers can relate to when considering how some present-day games tend to go. The Magnavox Odyssey and largely Ralph Baer started something big with the at-home game console, revolutionizing this type of gaming, with many more companies following suit with this new way to game. It is interesting to think what Ralph had done for the industry as a whole, and what the game industry would look like without his contributions. I find it important to look back and to give thanks to the people who helped shape video games as they are, especially Ralph Baer, the grandfather of video games. We thank you. Thank you for watching this episode of Bite-Sized Game History. Please like and subscribe for content in the future. Let me know of anything involving video games you would like to see a bite-sized history done on in the comments down below. Thank you, and have a beautiful day.